simultaneously relaxed and elevated. And thank Dr. Paul Joseph Dunn for that bit of humor.
Yes, thank
God
you.
bless me, Dad, Mom. Okay, and here we are. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Blue Star Rising, the Templar Awakening. I am Michael Henry Dunn, and am delighted to welcome back Kaliyani Sundari as our very special guest for the second episode in our Phoenix Rising Voices of Ascension series. So, Kaliyani, welcome. It's great to see you.
Thank you. It's good to be here again. Yeah.
Yeah. So, for those of you who may not have seen our first episode, we are focusing on the apparitions of Mother Mary in the context of what's being referred to as the Ascension timeline, in the context of a universal understanding of the Divine Mother, and in the particular expression of the Divine Feminine that is coming through the archetype of the Virgin Mary in various apparitions, and especially the ones at Garabandal in Spain, and how they relate to Fatima. And also perhaps we'll touch on Medjugorje. And we have a link below this video on YouTube to the 8-minute overview that we created, giving a perspective on the universal Divine Mother and how does she manifest in these living archetypes, and the nature of the Blessed Mother and of these apparitions. So we also have a link below the video to an introduction that we gave to Kaliyani and her life and work. And so we encourage you to watch episode 1 and to check out those 2 videos to get an overview of where we are, and also of Kaliyani and her work. So we're going to do some further exploration of, this, it's a vast topic and it's so rich and so current. This isn't just some kind of academic consideration of the nature of archetypes and the Divine Feminine. This is very, very compelling and current with what's unfolding in the world today. So, Kaliyani, I just wanted to ask you, I know you shared with me that there were some very interesting responses and questions that came from your community, which is, of course, a beautiful sisterhood that honor the goddess and celebrate the festivals, the equinox, the solstice, and that it's a powerful and somewhat controversial angle because of its association with the Catholic Church for the apparitions of Mary. Do you want to touch on that a little bit as we begin these further explorations?
Yes. It is. It's a very important thing to touch on because I've been known as someone around my community and sisterhood that has a more cosmic and polytheistic pagan perception of spirituality. And not that I don't believe in separating in anything that separates. So the idea is to embrace all aspects that bring us, all practices that bring us closer to God, however it manifests in our lives, however we choose to embrace them, and even though I was born Catholic, we have as a collective experienced this trauma created by the institution, a Catholic institution, through the Dark Ages and persecutions and all that we know so well, witch hunts. And so when Mary appeared in 1961, she was addressing precisely the Vatican, and the institutions of Catholic, uh, practice, the churches and the priests and the bishops and the cardinals. So she was addressing the community, but also the message and the prophecies were related to everyone. But the language she was using was a language of the times and a language that has been associated because it is a very Catholic language. We can't help but feel the triggering of these wounds come up. So I think we are attempting here is separate, which some have named churchianity from the true teachings of Christianity, and then move from a Piscean language to a more Aquarian language to interpret the words she used when she described those prophecies and what we need to do into a more comprehensible, unstained, deshadowed, illuminated, pure meaning, right? Of how can we hear what she's saying and understand it and open our hearts to receive it fully, because we can now see it beyond the shadow and beyond the wound. So that's what I would love to do with you today.
Yes, I love that word churchianity, and I'm pretty sure that it was actually Paramahansa Yogananda who coined that term long ago, 60, 70 years ago.
Oh, wow.
When he talked about, specifically he said that from his point of view, as a yoga master, that true Christianity, the true devotional stream from Yeshua the Christ had become so distorted over the years that what is actually taking place is not worship of the divine. It's not the Christ consciousness that is that is immanent, right?
Mhm.
IMMA, immanent, not immanent as in near, but immanent as in,
Yes,
completely present in every part of creation, like a holograph. That it had become churchianity, not Christianity, that true Christianity had become distorted into what he called churchianity.
Yeah.
And so that is, that's a very apt expression of it, because, with the Catholic Church, the reason that, for myself, having grown up Catholic, that I ended up seeking out a spiritual path that could be direct, that didn't need a church, didn't need sacraments, didn't need an intermediary, that through scientific devotional yoga meditation, one could, in the privacy of one's home, at one's altar, experience direct communion with God, Divine Mother. And so to see the Universal Divine Mother expressing in a very important, crucial time through this living archetype, which, when I say living archetype, I don't really know what that means, and I'd love for you to shed a little light on this, if you would, because I get the strong impression that you've delved, further into the meaning of that than I have. So the Universal Divine Mother expressing through this living archetype of the Blessed Virgin, who, as perhaps the twin flame soul, we might say, of Jesus, became this channel, this living channel for the Universal Divine Mother. And it's just a fascinating expression, because the miracles are so unignorable, because the grace that came through at Garabandal is so clearly divine and loving and benevolent, that and because the signs spoken of are are now being seen so clearly. And we're going to go into that in a little bit more detail too. But I'd love to explore just a little bit before we do that, this phrase, living archetype of Mary, and perhaps the same way Isis, as not just a deity, but possibly at one point a living woman who attained divine status and was thereafter worshipped in Egypt and throughout actually the Mediterranean basin and far north. So with that, I mean, the living archetype concept, can you share a little bit about your understanding of that and how you see it possibly playing out here?
I'm gonna just brush on it because this is such a broad topic. It could be part of an entire show, but I see that, referring to these historical beings who have become so big, such huge myths, and on a divine sense, divine archetypes are different than just archetypes. This is a divine archetype. So I see it is a ray, an emanation of, it's a container that holds a particular ray, quality, presence, purpose, gifts, benevolence, of as an aspect of the totality of the Godhead. So it's like I love doing this, analogy of, let's imagine the Godhead as a whole consciousness, as this spectacular, ineffable, immeasurable white light, okay? And the divine archetypes, which are cross-cultural and timeless. So they exist in different times, throughout times, in different culture, and they always are holding similar. There's many divine archetypes holding multi-cultures, the same rays, the same frequency, quality, service, right? We can go into that, but basically, as you break the light with a prism, you get these multicolored rays. So to me, Mary and Jesus, they're both divine archetypes, emanations and rays of the totality of the Godhead, all masters to me in this plane have come as just that ray of light with a specific purpose, a specific message, and in a specific time to deliver this message. So that's the shortest possible way that I could explain that.
Yeah, it's a beautiful and mysterious dynamic, really. I also wanted to ask about some of the language that Mary uses. For example, the message is to grow closer to God, lead good lives, pray deeply, and make sacrifices, and do penance, and to adore the Blessed Sacrament, which is, of course, a very Catholic. She's speaking in a Catholic context to not just to 4 young girls in a Catholic village in northern Spain, but to the Catholic world. And so I'd love to explore what these words, words like sacrifice, in a larger spiritual context and in today's context, what we are being encouraged by this ray of the divine feminine coming through, the living divine archetype of Mary, what we're being encouraged to do here in preparation for whether, the warning she spoke of, the crisis of conscience that will expose all of our souls, the miracle at Garabandal that will be a worldwide thing, but also healing phenomenon there, and the possible and, let's say, likely chastisement, a intense, world purifying trauma and chastisement, that so what do these words mean to us today? How can we receive them and interpret them, taking them out of their Catholic context, but holding their essence in a way that is, encouraging, inspiring, and helpful to us in preparing for, like, for example, the word sacrifice. So how do you feel that word resonate from the Catholic context of Garabandal in 1961 to today in a way that can help us?
Well, I feel like in a biblical sense, because this word has become such a huge part of Catholic Christianity. In a biblical sense, sacrifice has been associated with churchianity concepts of, like, we're born out of sin, and self-flagellation, or we have to suffer a lot, very Piscean, to expiate our inherent terrible nature, because we're born out of all of these are churchianity concepts, right? So the idea of sacrificing feels very self-punishing, because we're inherently bad. This is what comes up for me, and I got that reflected to me on a personal level after the first episode was launched, that some of the people hearing this, especially the aspect of me reading, her prophecies, and the one in 1961, in which she says you have to make many sacrifices and practice much penance, and and so on and so forth. So sacrifice in an Aquarian sense, let's illuminate this and take out the history of the Dark Ages, and remember that we know we're not born out of sin, and we're actually born out of God's nature. we're made its image, and we hold its potential. The yoga of Jesus, and Gnostic teachings, and many masters have said that over and over again. So in this day and age, we understand that spirituality is what's present in most of our consciousness, as opposed to the more categorical, traditional, old-fashioned approach to what sacrifice is. I would say it's as simple as stop looking to acquire and just look at yourself all the time. It's literally speaking of sacrificing how much time we think about ourselves, what we need, how we're going to obtain it, and how much time we can devote, attention we can devote, prayer we can devote, resources we can devote to someone else, to a loved one, to a person in need, to charity work. It's the excessive materialism and self-gratification and self-servitude that the modern world has been okay with. This is the survival of the fittest, and I'm going out there and I'm actually alone and there's nobody vying for me. If I don't do it, it's not going to happen. And I don't care who I have to walk over and, take out and, and hurt to get where I need to get. So basically, she's asking us to sacrifice a little of our time, our prayer, our attention, our resources, so that we're not doing everything just for ourselves. It's not like, go lock yourself in the bedroom and get a whip and that's not it. It's like, can you sacrifice a little bit of yourself to give it away? How much of that can you do? It's literally teaching us to compassion, basically. the whole entire message, the whole entire request leads us to open our hearts to one another and remember that we're not alone, that there's a greater reality. There is a divine reality, a divine realm that's observing us. There is a greater purpose for our souls to grow and learn. And that eventually, you know, there will be a time where we're going to have to come to terms with how we have been walking, you know, the walk, how we have been living. And that's what the end times is. It's like that's how this whole thing is going to unfold. But usually we don't have to even have it happen uh, in a living sense, like she's saying it's going to happen. Like we're going to have a life review while in the body. But that accounting always comes at the time of death for every single human being. But now, because the transformation needs to happen in such an imminent level in this planet to be able to rebirth the consciousness that we're living in, it's going to be visible and felt in the flesh. So that's what the warning. And then I don't know if you have any comments about that, and we can move into penance.
Well, yeah, just to touch on sacrifice a little bit. As you say, it's this, moving away from attachment to the body, attachment to our comforts, attachment to the idea that, whoever dies with the most toys wins.
Yeah.
And that even small sacrifices, like, letting somebody else have the parking space, or, giving
forward,
or, and it's not as if there's always this, delicate question of moving into being codependent or self-negligent or not doing self-care.
Mm-hmm.
That's not what we're talking about when we say sacrifice.
That would be the
It doesn't, it does not mean we tolerate abuse, but this concept of, in former ages, the contemplatives and monks would actually, there was wearing, coarse hair shirts to irritate the skin, or actually, flagellating the back with a whip. That in those darker ages, that sadly and rather pathetically was the best they could do in terms of trying to forget the body. Now, to me, if you're wearing a coarse hair shirt and your back is bleeding, it's going to be a lot more difficult to forget the body, and to sit in contemplation. So as the age has risen, and now today, you can just go into the internet and do a search for methods of scientific yoga meditation and direct communion with source, which previously, even a couple of centuries ago, say 3 centuries ago, you'd have been burned at the stake, as a witch, or a heretic or whatever, for circumventing the sacramental power, the intermediary, the necessary, indispensable intermediary for grace, to think that you, unaided, could engage in this witchcraft of, and there are sadly, of course, some communities that still refer to the science of yoga meditation as witchcraft. Mm-hmm. But now, that was a lower frequency meaning of the word sacrifice then. And now, as you say, it's about compassion, and it's about helping us to remember that we are not this body, which, eventually decays and withers. And we're not the mind either, with its restless thoughts floating, that we are the soul, that, we have a body, we have a mind, but we are the soul and our essential essence of consciousness as a spark of the divine. And so, that's the beautiful universal sense of sacrifice, and from the spirit of compassion. So in that sense, when we go to talking about penance, mm-hmm. I mean, where does that go? being raised Catholic, and when I was going through the sacraments, and a little Catholic kid being trained in catechism. Okay, so now you got to go to confession, and you got to go into the little confessional booth, and the priest is on the other side of the little screen, and you hear the sound of the screen being pulled back, and it's "Bless me, Father, for I have sinned. It has been 30 days since my last confession." And he's wearing this purple sash. When he puts on the purple sash, as far if you're a 10-year-old Catholic kid, it means you're talking to Jesus. He's Jesus now because he's wearing the purple sash. All right. So it's very, for his innocent little Catholic kid, it's very awesome experience. So, I quarreled with my brother. I stole my classmates' crayons. I disobeyed my mom. It's okay. For your penance, you now leave the confessional booth and go kneel in the pew out there and say 3 Hail Marys and 3 Our Fathers and an act of contrition. So it's like penance in the sense of punishment. It's just ironic that your punishment is to pray. Okay, you've been bad. I'm going to punish you. You have to go pray. That the beautiful act of prayer is somehow seen. That's how I saw it. It's like, okay, I must have been really bad. I'm going to have to do 6 Our Fathers. I'm going to have to sit here and do these prayers as my punishment. So it's So how do you feel in terms of what that word means in an Aquarian context as we move up?
I think the simplest way, penance by definition is a reparation of a misdeed. Okay, so penance, first of all, requires that we acknowledge. So in an Aquarian age, let's say in modern days, first step is to know that you did something unconscious, that you hurt someone, that you could have done something better. This is what biblically is a sin. You acted either with flawed morals, excessive selfishness, whatever it is that in those days was called sin, which is another word full of terrifying associations. Okay. Penance means, hey, dude, I really was out of line yesterday. I'm really sorry. I shouldn't have said that. I want to make it up to you, so can I, take you out to lunch tomorrow and, let's share our hearts and whatever, and the next week you show up and give him, a book that you think will uplift him or it's like, how can I make up for something that I know was not the best I could do, give, or be? And do the shadow work. Look at those things that as we become more conscious, we don't have, as we grow on a conscious level, on a soul level, it will evolve. It's like you can compare that, make an analogy from a child growing into an adult. You don't have to have your mom and dad telling you all the time. You have to brush your teeth, and you have to, be polite. You have to wash your hands before you eat, or, you have to be kind to people when you meet them. You ask them how they're doing, you shake their hands, whatever. You now are responsible, and maybe in primitive times, maybe in the dark ages, we needed to have an institution or an authority tell us, what is sin and what is not. Today we know when we're out of line, if we have some sense of where is our belief system laid on, what truths and value systems are we living by. Of course, we're talking about somebody who cares about how they're walking and talking, and living this life and playing this cosmic game. I'm talking about conscious beings now. There's so much resource, do the work. Find out what's the most shameful aspect of ourselves, the stuff that we know we have to work on, that we don't like to admit that we do, or that we think, or that we be, or that we tend to go towards. We're too defensive, we're too this, we're too reactive, we're too emotional, we take everything personal, whatever it is that we have to work on, and work towards that getting better. How do you make yourself getting better? It may be um, through prayer, because if that connects you to God, and you feel that when you're connected to God, the angels and the masters and all those invisible, wonderful, legions of light that are there to work as soldiers of the divine, are able to approach you, and they're able to nudge you, and they're able to remind you more frequently when you're kind of starting to wobble and go the wrong way, or so it could be that, and it could be basically just if you feel really bad for doing something terrible against the environment for so many years because of the job you did, the work you did, and your penance would be, I would love to plant trees. I want to plant 100 trees in the next couple of years. This is penance. It's becoming aware of your misdeed, confessing it to a friend, to yourself, privately, to God, but then go ahead and how do you repair it? Repair it. How do you make up to a friend you hurt? Somebody who broke their heart, somebody you mistreated. This is penance. How can I fix this? Right? It's that simple. Go do some charity work, if you it's like if you regret, that's repentance, right? If you regret doing something, find the opposite end of what you did that you judge yourself for doing, that you realize you could have done better, and go do it in the world. You can volunteer time in an orphanage, spend time with the elderly in an elderly home or in a hospital, or if you feel like you ignored God and the aspect of reality we don't see, that now you've been shown that it exists, and create your own sacred space and become a practitioner of your own connection with the divine, be it through meditation, prayer, um, contemplation, prostrations, you know whatever, however you were touched by the divine, because the divine comes and touches us with grace in so many different ways, and there's
Yeah.
no one way. There's many ways to God, right?
Yeah, and it reminds me, I mean, a beautiful avenue of penance that we have available to us now that, you know, was not available in previous centuries. The wonderful Hawaiian practice of Ho'oponopono, right? Which simply means moving fully into the meaning of these words: forgive me, I'm sorry, I love you, thank you. That process of asking for forgiveness, expressing your sorrow, expressing love, and expressing gratitude for the grace that can flow. I mean, that's the whole. I mean, that is confession and sacrifice and penance all in one. To be able to do that, and then as I listen to you talking about how to make it right, reparation, that this is now actually being expressed even on an institutional level, as far as our very flawed and compromised justice systems, the concept of restorative justice. Rather than locking somebody away in a prison for a lot of years, all right, so you robbed or you stole or you injured, you attacked. First of all, yes, we do need to remove you from the ability to do any further harm. And if there is someone who is, serial sexual assault or things like that, yeah, all right, fine. Therapy, yes, but first we're going to remove you from the ability to do any further harm. Um, but then there are many actual programs that are now rolling out. It's how in schools, students will accept justice from fellow students, from their own community where they are called to account by their fellow students, and restorative justice is imposed. Okay, well, here's what you need to do to make it right. And that's just, a wonderfully graceful and benevolent and just way of addressing offenses and what we call sin, which, as Paramahansa Yogananda said, well, never say I'm a sinner, which of course in the Catholic Church we're saying all the time. um, peccatoribus and all that. That sin is simply acting out of ignorance of your highest benefit, which is the spirit of love and compassion, and recognizing that the illusion of separation, that you're a separate being who has to gain advantage at the disadvantage of other separate beings, that this is sin. That is essentially what sin is, and that rather than identify ourselves with that, oh, I'm a sinner, that no, I am a reflection of the divine, and I have acted out of ignorance of that, and I will make it right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right, beautiful. Yeah. So to get back to Garabandal, I know we had talked about some of the indications that we're seeing, that some of the signs that were spoken of by the Blessed Mother at Garabandal are appearing to show up. And, specifically about things like when the Pope makes a trip to Moscow, various very specific things that she told the children about, that the miracle will happen on a Thursday between 8 and 8:30 p.m. around the occasion of an occasion of great joy, rare occasion of great joy within the Catholic Church, near or on the feast day of a saint connected to the Holy Eucharist, in the months of March, April, or May, and that Conchita will tell the world 8 days before the miracle is to happen. And that the warning, which is this traumatic illumination of conscience, seeing our souls as God sees them, the negative effects of all the bad we have done, or of the good that we have left undone, that this will happen within 12 months of the miracle itself, which will be announced by Conchita 8 days before it happens. And it is said, I'm pretty sure that Conchita actually does know the year, or even perhaps the date of the miracle, and which she feels that it is not hers to reveal.
Well,
So
she's going to announce it 8 days before it happens.
Right. She's going to announce it. So I know you've done a lot of research on this, and one of the things about it is, all right, timelines and grace and free will and things can change. And, Mother Mary says, look, I love you. I want to, avoid your condemnation, avoid your suffering. You have free will. You can turn to God. This can be avoided. So how does that, I mean, in terms of the research you have done, and also your feeling in your heart and in attunement with the Divine Mother, how do you feel this playing out? I mean, are there ways in which you are feeling this to such an extent that you're going to be more aware of the possible convergence of these events? What details are showing up for you with that?
This is the sensitive part because, like I said in the first episode of the series, my intention is to create awareness, inform, and to free people to make good choices. and this understanding, and it is something that pulled me in very strongly because of the nature of the children's experiences, that I mentioned before. It really impressed in my soul. And I had known about Fatima, like I said, so since I was a child, because I was born from a Catholic family as well. So it impressed on me, and my research has led to, first of all, when we think about the warning, let's start with the warning, right? Or do you want to start with the miracle?
Well, let's start with the warning, since it is supposed to happen before the
Yeah.
miracle. Yeah.
Well, it may actually make sense to start with the miracle because it's the only aspect that we actually have certain, there's guidelines to loosely have a sense of when that will happen. And it makes you wonder, why didn't she just say when? Because there's always a fear of a sense of panic, or or who knows. So, but the parameters are, if you don't mind me going to the miracle
No,
first,
please do.
it is going to happen on a Thursday at 8:30 p.m. Garabandal time, which is Spain. And it's going to fall on, coincide with a feast of a martyr related to the Eucharist, okay? It is a little known martyr. Some people have understood it as a little martyr, and I got to read so many different texts and translations. I even bought Conchita's diary book. And this little known, meaning it's not a very well-known martyr related to the Eucharist. And people have, the world over, there's forums about it. There are people who have been following this for decades. And there is many options there, as we went over that on the last one. And there was one thing that nobody seems to quite put a finger on, nobody's mentioning, which is the fact that the miracle will coincide, unrelated, will coincide with a major celebration, a joyous celebration of the church, a happy, joyous event, a major event that happens rarely. It's not new. She mentioned it's like celebration of a big dogma, but it's not something that happens yearly, and it happens very rarely. And she said, for example, it never happened in my life. But when she said that, she was 15 years old, or so, or 14, or because all of this was happening between her being 12 and 16. So the apparitions lasted about 4 years. And the last apparition, which was 1965 in November 13, she only appeared to Conchita. And it was the last apparition. Anyway, so this is something that came to me accidentally as I was looking for the pre-warnings. So that's going to bring us to the pre-warning that 2021 was a Jubilee year. It's called the Jacobean Jubilee year. And it means that St. James feast falls on a Sunday, which is rare. It happens every 10, 11, 12 years, something like that. And when that happens, it's said that if you go to do the walk, the Santiago de Compostela, if you walk through that basilica cathedral on those years, you're absolved of all sins. Jubilee years are years where God is most forgiving, that there's a lot of room a lot more room for mercy from God. So this was 2021, but because of the infections going around and the issues that we've had, health issues that have been going on, the celebrations that are usually held in those years, which are huge years, there's major celebrations in St. James Cathedral, which is in Santiago de Compostela, and huge pilgrimages, and there's a huge party going on. Okay, this was not able to be accomplished in 2021 because of the health situation worldwide. Now, the Pope has the right to extend, he has authority to extend the Jubilee. The Jubilee has extended to 2022. And there are already plans to create this huge festivity soon, and Santiago de Compostela. So this is a major, rare celebration. Okay, now I am looking at, the warning is going to happen within 12 months. It could be as close as a few days, 2 weeks, 2 months, 3 months, but it will be within the same year of the miracle, right? So she said the miracle, she said the warning is going to be like two stars colliding. She said the best way for me to describe it is like two stars colliding in the sky. And it will be terrifying. It's a fire that won't burn us. But in that moment, everybody in the world will feel it, see it, and will basically be hit with an emotional transformation of conscience. It's called a huge illumination of consciousness, that for those who have lived a very materialistic, self-serving life, selfish, self-gratifying, that does not care about other people, who has no more comprehensive value systems, that live a more or less life of self-serving, and trying to achieve its ends through whatever means, will be terrifying to them. They would prefer to be dead, because what's going to happen is a life review in that moment. So there will be a celestial event that at the same time causes an inner awakening. It's going to be felt by every single person in the planet, regardless of religion, belief system, race, color, nothing. Every single being will feel it. And it's basically a come to God. It's a life review while alive, which is unheard of. And that will bring us a lot closer to God. There will be intense conversion. And when I say conversion, and I'm just reflecting, okay, this is not me, this is what has been shared by Mother Mary. This is an attempt to bring more people close to the understanding of the truth, that there is a higher reality, that God exists, and that there's an expectation of us living good lives. Because she said, you have to make more sacrifices and penance, and above all, you must live good lives. So this, most of all, live good lives means, yes, for Catholics, understanding, prayer, and there's tremendous power of prayer. I don't want to say, I don't want to take away from that. Particular practices and rituals of the Catholic Church for Catholics. But your life can be a prayer. Your life can be a conscious act. The closer you are to living in a higher standard for your own, with higher moral values. And when I say moral, I'm not talking, again, churchianity morals. I'm talking about sensible principles that are very basic. Don't do to others what you wouldn't want done to yourself. Before you're about to say something to someone, or take an action, or do something because you're feeling triggered, think about, how would that feel if it was done to you? So it's that simple, right? So anyway, I'm getting kind of sidetracked here. The event that, so this incredible event is going to be like a stars colliding. So it's a celestial visible thing. And then it will happen inside of us. And you bring people closer to God. Following the warning, there will be a period of peace because people will be very contrived. They will be processing what just happened. Okay. So I said to myself, why not look up if there's any stars colliding, in the near future? Well, it just so happens that two stars are expected to collide in 2022 around the month of May, which is just, a couple months away, 2.5 months away. And even they're saying even May 12th, like if we bring, you can look it out there, you will find your own things. There's somebody who said, oh, was a miscalculation. But in 2017, there were so many reports of this professor, a college professor in California, who had been working with astronomer students, and they were observing this binary star, which is in the Cygnus constellation on the right arm of the Northern Cross. So inside the Cygnus constellation, there's another constellation called Northern Cross, and it's on the outer right arm of that cross. So it's very interesting. It's a cross, which is a symbol of Christianity, and there's two stars colliding right there. Some people think it's just going to look like a little, when they do, because they're, 1,500 light years away. But can we really measure? These are big stars, and we have never, ever before been able to predict a supernova. So this is a supernova happening in our skies. Then there's the possibility that, Betelgeuse will die. And it's a red giant that is coming close to dying. And when they die, there's a major explosion. Betelgeuse is actually a lot closer, I think, than this binary system.
Yeah, I
There's
think
lots of
50 light years.
Yeah, I think it's 500 instead of
Okay.
something like that.
Yeah.
So, what is it? I don't know. Is it going to happen now? But when I put all the dates and the Martyr of the Eucharist and the Jubilee year, it brings us to May 12th. Okay. Could that be the day that we're going to have the warning? Is that the day of the miracle? They seem to be coming together very close, because if the stars are colliding around May, the stars could collide in June, July. Some people say it's unpredictable. Even though they're calculating their orbits, they're getting faster and faster. The last time I looked, it was 9 hours. That it only takes 9 hours for them to orbit each other. So if that is going to be, it could be, if it's going to be this year, now there's another Jubilee, maybe in another 10, 11 years, there will be the Jubilee. It's the more traditional Jubilee year. It happens every 25 years. So the last time it was in 2000. They are already preparing for a big celebration of the Jubilee with the traditional. That's not a Jacobean Jubilee. It's not related to Saint James, who is an apostle brother of Jesus, a Santiago. It's just another, every 25 years, God will forgive more easily. And then it's a year where we forgive others and we ask for forgiveness and repentance. It's a practice, right? But it only happens every 25 years, because Jubilee means a celebration of joy. And because she mentions, and I've never seen it in any forum, nobody's paying attention to the Jubilee. So there's a Jubilee year happening this year, and there is another Jubilee happening in 2025. And then if you bring the martyrs, it gets very complicated, because there's so many martyrs of the Eucharist,
Yeah.
But it's still very it helps because you have to find that one day, which is a Thursday, in 3-week period. And most of the martyrs will fall in April or May. So most people are ignoring the March. She said either in March, April, or May, right? Between the 8th and the 16th. So we have 1 week, where one Thursday of each month. If you just look at April and May, it makes it even less. And if you look at all the other coordinates she gives us, and I don't know where you want to go from here, but
Well, you brought out a lot of really dynamic and intriguing thoughts here. When we talk about, for example, a Jacobean Jubilee where the Feast of St. James, the Apostle, brother of Jesus, falls on a Sunday, it's a Jacobean year. And if you walk through the doors of the basilica that contains the bones of St. James, if you do, the pilgrimage walk of Santiago de Compostela, that walking through those archways on that day, is absolution of sins. And it's comparable, like, for example, in Hinduism, at the Kumbh Mela, the great religious festival fair that happens every 12 years. The Maha Kumbh Mela happens every 12 years. For thousands of years, it's gone on in India. And the sadhus, come down from the caves and they all gather at different holy places. And if you enter the sacred waters of the Ganges at the confluence with, the Ganges and the Jamuna rivers, and the Saraswati River is supposed to be flowing underground. If you walk in at the right moment, astrologically, your sins are absolved, right? So there is, and also in the Jubilee history, St. Francis of Assisi, there is this little ruined chapel on the plains outside of Assisi that was given to St. Francis and his first few monks, and they were just this little band in the forest. The Dominicans said, well, we have this ruined chapel. It's called the Portioncula, and you can use that. It became the center of the Franciscan order. Eventually, hundreds or even thousands of monks would gather every year or so. And one day, towards the end of his life, Francis received a visitation from the Blessed Mother. And she said that on my feast day, those who gather here in my aspect of Queen of the Angels, that there will be remission of sins for those who gather on that day. And so later the Pope legitimized it. Wasn't enough the Blessed Mother said it, but Pope had to legitimize it. And so that little chapel, the Portioncula, became a place of pilgrimage on her feast day, and people would come from all over Europe. And now, of course, the little chapel is still exactly where it was, only it's inside a huge basilica. Right? And I went there. But it is this concept of a time of great celebration within the church, as you say. And certainly a Jubilee, so when I was a practicing Catholic as a young boy, I was not aware of Jubilees. I mean, they must have come and gone, when I was still attending Mass on a regular basis. So I would love to see Pope Francis really bring it forward. If it is, it has been extended, as you say, it's been extended to 2022. You mentioned, Kaliyani, the idea of there being the announcement of a new dogma is a very rare event also, a joyous event also. And
it's not, though. She made it clear that
that it was not a dogma?
That the Mother said it's not anything new. It's an existing celebration.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because I would love to see it be the announcement of the Pope recognizing the stature of the Blessed Mother as co-redemptrix with Christ as Pope John Paul II. Yeah, who knows? I mean, let's hope that happens too, because that could open the door to, the kind of reform that is necessary if that particular institution is to remain a channel of grace. Um, so, all right, I just wanted, touch on some other things that we wanted to share
Yeah,
with
and it
you.
was completely unknown to me that 2021 was a Jubilee year, and it wasn't until I returned from Garabandal that I actually realized that,
Hmm.
and I actually got to go into the cathedral as well, and on my way to Garabandal from northern Portugal, I passed. I went to Santiago. I didn't do the walk, but yeah, I went to Santiago.
Uh,
So it's all these coincidences are very interesting, So I don't want to put too much meaning in there. And my pulling towards imbuing myself in the energy of Garabandal and looking deeper into this message. Uh, and then finding out when I return, I realized that I was baptized in a parish, a church near where I was born that was Our Lady of Carmel, who is how Mary identified herself when she appeared in Garabandal. And that Rio de Janeiro, the city I was born, the I find it interesting, just interesting side facts. The patron of Rio is San Sebastian, and Garabandal's patron is San Sebastian. So San Sebastian of
uh,
Garabandal, Rio de Janeiro is patron is San Sebastian, and I was baptized, and my mother was married in the same church, which is Our Lady of Carmel. My
right, and
father,
then
when he came from Portugal, he opened a business in the city called Praça do Carmo, which is, it's in Portuguese we say Carmo, Carmo, instead of Carmel, because
hmm,
Carmel. Uh, so it's very interesting. I just wanted to bring that out.
yeah,
It's
these synchronicities that are spirit.
lots of synchronicities. Yeah.
Yeah, and you're being drawn to Garabandal. I remember you said on November 13th on a
I
Saturday,
arrived, yeah, I was there on November 13th.
which happened to be the
19, yeah, it's
anniversary of the last apparition of the Blessed Mother to Conchita, right?
65. Yeah, it was, yeah, 56 years. hmm Which is the year I was born, 65.
Right.
So very
Um,
interesting.
so there is also, I mean, a lot of people focus, of course, and it's understandable, on the warning, the miracle, the chastisement, the date. Is it coming? We were given this information by the Blessed Mother, so it's not as if it's unimportant. And yet, the focus should be on the message. And the message of Garabandal is to some extent about the warning, miracle, chastisement, but it's primarily about sacrifice and compassion and love and prayer and growing closer to God, and less focused on the body and materialism, and leading good lives. And particularly,
Doing more charity as well.
yeah, and particularly when we talk about prayer, and I'd love to get into this for a little bit, about prayer in the Catholic context in Garabandal at that time, and then prayer in our larger understanding when the Blessed Mother talks about adoration of the Blessed Sacrament. Okay, that's a very Catholic ritual and path in which the consecrated host is exposed in what's called monstrance, which is a gold container with a glass window in which the host itself is visible, and that it is a means of communing with the Spirit of Christ in the consecrated host. This is my body, which will be given up for you. Shall we, do this in remembrance of me? That it is for Catholics. And I remember finding it to be a beautiful experience when I was, a young boy. And my father actually related to me that on a retreat that he went on, that he was alone in a chapel um, before the Blessed Sacrament, and this light came out of the host and enveloped him. So that's for Catholics, that is that channel of grace. And so when we talk about prayer, and I know that you know how transforming and uplifting and how it raises our frequency to engage in intense, direct communion with spirit. And different religions have different practices to attain this. And that this is perhaps the most powerful way for us to, it makes sacrifice natural because we're identifying with the soul in prayer. We're basking in the love of Divine Mother. It becomes natural and easier to then move out into your day and act and breathe and move from a center of grace and compassion. And I know in your experience, for example, with Kuan Yin, are there, particular ways or channels of grace that you are feeling more called to or immersed in these days, as in the wake of your pilgrimage? How are you feeling an intensification, perhaps, of your your interior life and your practice of the presence, we might say, of Divine Mother?
Mm. Yeah, well, I was brought up with prayer, a lot of prayer. My mother taught me to pray in a crib. Okay. I wrote an article about that. And so, and for years, she sat by my bedside. I remember being 6 and 7, and she was still sitting with us during bedtime and watching us pray or praying with us. So several prayers a night we would do, at least 4, and it became a part of my being as I grew up, as I became a teenager and an adult. I continued to pray because I felt if I didn't, something was incomplete. It just didn't feel right. It was part of my being. And, um, you know, I, um, I had a desire for it and I enjoyed it. And I always remember asking for discernment for some reason. It was one of the things that came to my mind and the downloads I got as one of the most difficult attainments is discernment. So I asked for discernment. Discernment is knowing the difference between truth and untruth. Let's just say that, right? Discern. And it's such an important thing this day and age where, there's so much distortion um, in our field and so much co-opting and confusion, right? And the truth has become something very hard to understand, grasp, and know. So, I um, I ended up marrying someone who was Jewish um, and Christian mixed, somebody who preferred to not take sides and became completely non-religion and even um, confessed himself as an atheist, which I knew he wasn't, but it was an interesting thing because I discovered those things slowly later about him. And but his pain of having lost a huge part of his family to concentration camps, his father's brothers, and so his uncles and aunts and nieces and nephews. Um, and he watched his father cry many times receiving letters from Germany after his father moved to Brazil, got married with a Catholic woman, and had him. He was number one, the first of three. And so my compassion kicked in, and I just thought, I'm not gonna impose my belief system on him, and I'm going to, practice quietly. But I also became very grounded. He brought me into this world like I used to be in this, always more in a spiritual, uh, explorations than more in the world. And he really landed me, and I kind of, little by little stopped praying. And I had a different kind of prayer, which is my children, because the love I felt in being a mother, and the joy of motherhood and the beauty of it and the sweetness, of young children. And, I had a heart filled with love, for many years during my marriage. And, not everything that ends is bad, but our marriage ended. And at that time, I returned to prayer. And that's a whole story where Kuan Yin comes in and all that. But that will take us in a whole different tangent. And so I am, after that, I was taken into an awakening, and many, many different um, new ways of prayer were shown to me and came to me, and I practiced different practices, for many years. And right now, currently, I find myself um, uh, revisiting prayer, in a traditional sense. So I am actually, because I never quite stopped praying. I found many prayers that were, um, I call it non-dogmatic, not Catholic, but angelic, sometimes Christian, sometimes non-denominational, sometimes very cosmic, Gnostic. Uh, and I wasn't always praying every day either, or night. I go through phases where, a meditation or a chant or prostrations or contemplation. Gardening to me can be a prayer. And so right now I've been exploring prayer in the traditional sense, even though I sometimes will, um, you know, slightly accommodate a word or another and substitute it for a word that makes it feel a little more spacious, inclusive, or um, real, instead of, I kind of take out the churchianity from it. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's been a beautiful, sweet exploration that I've been having, and not sure how long it will last. But like I said, it will, all forms of contemplation, adoration, whatever makes us feel closer to God at any moment can become our practice, and because I'm very fluid, I don't advocate to become rigid and believe that just this one form is the only form, so I do flow and navigate between practices, and this is beautiful too, at least.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, for example, for me, in the spiritual path and community that has been mine for a lot of years, as you know, with the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda, Kriya Yoga, through self-realization and fellowship,
I have
which again
heard.
is, as I know you have been many times to their, beautiful temple at the Lake Shrine in Pacific Palisades, that I wanted a direct path, without the need of the intermediary. And yet, so there are a lot of affirmations I will do. And living in Colorado in the mountains, I'll go on hikes. And as I walk, I will, pray from the heart. this is the essence of it. Always pray from the heart. Never have mechanical, repetitive prayer that's in the head or just in the vocal apparatus, but from the heart. Brother Bhaktananda, our wonderful saintly minister at Hollywood Temple, would say, imagine that your heart has a mouth, and it is the heart itself that is praying, right? So, and yet the Hail Mary never really left me, and because I've been a singer and have sung the Ave Maria many times, both the two most well-known ones, the Schubert and the Bach Undone. There's something transformative, transporting, let us say, about the Latin for me. Ave Maria, gratia plena, Dominus tecum. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with you. Benedicta tu in mulieribus, blessed art thou amongst women, et benedictus fructus ventris Iesu, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus, which are the words that the angel Gabriel spoke to the Virgin Mary, just 16-year-old girl, being told that she would conceive of the Most High. And of course, that would mean that she'd be pregnant out of wedlock, which is a sin punishable by stoning to death at that time. I think we underestimate the courage, the amazing courage of Mary. But those words that, for some reason, when we take it into this higher language, that the Latin really touches me. And like you, when I get to certain places, I think I'm going to change a word. I'm going to make this work a little bit better for me. So, as a Catholic kid, of course, I said thousands of Hail Marys, and you get to the second part of the prayer, Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. And so there is that Catholic emphasis on, your sinful nature, your original sin, that I choose not to emphasize. So when I pray it in English, I will say, Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for your children. Not pray for us sinners, but pray for your children now and at the hour of our death. Amen. So it is, to me, just an indispensable, natural motion of the soul towards the divine, to find those prayers that most touch your heart. And then, there'll be an arc to your relationship with that prayer, where then your heart calls you to another expression, another prayer. Wow. All right. And for the third episode, we are looking to actually go into greater depth on the power of prayer, the transformative nature of it, and to explore perhaps in more detail some of your journey, Kaliyani, with Kuan Yin, with the goddess, and in your community. And
maybe we can explore a little bit of all the other apparitions, which has been something that, after Garabandal, I decided to look into, and there's so many more incredible 200 years were
right, exactly. There's Fatima.
Media suppressing it. The church has no interest in letting that, the institution, let's say, not the church, but so that would be a great thing to do too, if you're
yeah. So there's Fatima, there's Medjugorje, Lourdes, and of course Guadalupe, the miraculous tilma in the cathedral in Mexico City, which, just the existence of it, the phenomenal nature of that, is something that, mainstream media would prefer to ignore, because it is so undeniably supernatural and divine in its properties and origin. And of course, there's the Blessed Mother at Akita in Japan,
and in Africa.
and in
Okay.
Africa,
Venezuela.
Egypt,
Yeah.
right? So
Or
we, yeah, we would love to have all of you join us, please, next time. And in the meantime, please do like and subscribe and share as you feel inspired to with friends. Below the video here, of course, you can find links to Kaliyani's homepage and her music, also to the 8-minute introductory overview of our subject of the Divine Mother and the apparitions, as well as a 2-minute overview of Kaliyani's life and work. So with that, thank you all so much. And we look forward to sharing with you again. Please do join us again. And God bless us, everyone. Bye for now.